Okay, I am here. Hello, class. How are you? Seems like I just get done with the one class, I turn around, I'm in another one, but that's my schedule. Nobody told me to have this schedule. I did it myself. I like it though. I like my schedule. Today, we are in the critical thinking classroom. Thank you for joining me. I am the teacher. We are here in the classroom. And we have got some exciting stuff in this classroom. This is the classroom to be in. So I talk to you as if you are high school students, basically, right? Try to keep my cussing down for the high school students, but we talk like an adult here, and we really do talk about adult topics that will help you in these years. All right, so critical thinking about all kinds of things that are going to help you develop a concept of who you are. That's really what we're looking for in this classroom. Okay, so let's go ahead and get on with it. Today we're going to talk about, remember what I said, I always roll into the new topic. So usually towards the end of the topic or the end of the class, we start touching on the new topic. So it won't be till the end of the class that we start talking about emotional baggage and personality types. And if you recall, we are still into the attachment, into talking about attachment. So we talked about attraction, attachment, and then what was the next one after that? Let me take a look. Actually, I think I need to look here. Oh, and then we talked about what is sexy. What does it mean to be sexy and having healthy attachments? That was on day 28. And then we talked about loving relationships. Are they worth it? And now we're talking about attribution retraining is what we're talking about, right? So what was the concept that we were trying to get, that I was trying to get across? The idea here is, how can we develop a level of self-esteem and self-confidence that makes you sexy, that makes you attractive, right? That makes you feel like you have a high level of self-worth. That's where we're going with this. Now, what we've said is basically the way that we do this is by observing and learning and comparing ourselves to other people. Now, comparing yourself to other people, what is that called? Oh, we call that upward or downward comparison, but there's another name for it. This is my lemon. It's like, oh, I'm not going to get it. It doesn't matter. When we compare ourselves to others, for example, when we get on Instagram or when we get on Facebook or whatever you're on in your social media, we know that people get off of the social media platforms more depressed than they were when they get on it. Why? Because we do a lot of social comparison is what we do. There is good, healthy social comparison, and then there's social comparison that isn't so healthy, that leaves us depressed. And we've talked about this in this classroom before. And what this has to do with is discrepancies. How far are you from the person you want to be? And is that person that you're looking at on social media, is that person closer to who you want to be than you are? Is that person a competitor of yours? Evaluation apprehension is what we is one of those things. We evaluate other people based on their position to us. So if you're like me, but more successful in a field that I desire to be in, that's going to create some emotional tension. So here we're doing social comparisons, and we can see where we will create some emotional tension for us in this social comparison, in this exercise of social comparison. However, if we also want to be motivated to become something more than what we are, we also need to do social comparison. And that's social comparison that ends up having a positive outcome. So it really has a lot to do with your attitude about it. Are you comparing yourself to someone who is so far above you, who is like you, but so far above you that you'll never reach that level? Well, that can be depressing. But it can also be enjoyable, right? I can watch a great basketball player and know that I will never be that great basketball player, but enjoy it. That's not social comparison, right? That simply is just observation of somebody else's talent. It's not social comparison. If I desired that position and somebody else has it, now we're talking about social comparison. But again, that doesn't have to end up in a negative outcome. It doesn't have to end up in me feeling bad or depressed about myself, the social comparison. I might compare myself to someone who motivates me, right? That's motivation for me. So I watch an expert in, in artistry. I watch a professional athlete. I watch a supervisor or a vice president, right? Or the owner of a business. I watch them and I see what they do in order to motivate me to develop those behaviors to become that person, right? All of this put in your noggin as part of attribution retraining. This is the retraining that we were talking about and started on the other day. So we were talking about attachment styles, right? And thinking about attachment styles, but now moving into the idea that these attachment styles as an adult don't have to be set in stone. I don't have a lot of control over how my parents treated me or whether or not my mom held me when I needed to be held. I don't have a lot of control over that. But if I have an understanding of what makes for good relationships or healthy relationships, then what I can do is begin to change my thinking. What is attribution? Attribution is the cause for our outcomes. What is the reason I got in this car accident? What is the reason I got a promotion? What is the reason that my cousin doesn't like me? What is the reason that when I eat this food, it upsets my stomach? What is the reason that I feel more energy after I am taking a walk in the sunshine? What are the reasons for? That's an attribution. It answers the question why. Why does this happen? Why do I feel better after a walk in the sunshine? Why do I feel worse after a night of drinking? Why do I feel better when I study? Why do I feel worse when I fail? Right? Attributions are the reasons that we give for why things happen. And what we said was they could be good events or they could be bad events. And what this tells us is it tells us how optimistic or pessimistic we are. Now, what I did was I put up another few. I have surveys for you to take a look at and also to measure your optimism, your pessimism, your personal efficacy, all of these things that have to do with feelings of control. This is another survey that you can take. It is called the Life Orientation Test. And this also will give you a measure of your optimism or pessimism. It's a real quick test, and it's a real easy. So some of these other quizzes that I gave you, like this locus of control is what this survey is called. So John Rotter's, I'm sorry, not John. Oh gosh, it begins with a J, but it's not John. It's but his last name is it's Julian. Julian Rotter. And this is a survey of locus of control, how much control. But that's what all of these are really based on, right? Even this personal efficacy that we took a look at, how much control do you have? And now I've got a life orientation test, which is about optimism and pessimism. But again, control. In uncertain times, I usually expect the best. It's easy for me to relax. If something can go wrong for me, it will. So you can see how these questions are about control. That little glass there is our sort of measure of optimism and pessimism, right? A layperson's measure of optimism or pessimism. Is that glass there? Is it half full or is it half empty, right? So that's the reason why I had that glass there. So this is another measure I put up there of optimism and pessimism. You could see there at the bottom that it explains to you how you can score that. Real easy survey, only 10 questions, and you can see how to score that. And you can also get another measure, like I said, of optimism and pessimism. But the idea here is to take a look at how much control you think you have over situations. Remember, what we said was, what do we have? Internal, external. It's my fault, or it's due to something else. Is it my fault, or is it my sort of talent, right? Did it happen because I was, dumb, or did it happen because I was smart, right? So that could be due to me, internal, external, right? Does it happen all the time? Stable. If it's a good event and it happens all the time, optimist. If it's a bad event and it happens all the time, pessimist, right? Does it happen in every situation, global, or is it specific to this situation? If it happens, if I have good luck in all situations, that's an optimist. If I have bad luck in all situations, that's a pessimist, right? So, but the bottom line so those are attributions, explanations for why things happen. Things happen because they always happen. They always happen in every circumstance, and they always happen and it's my fault, or the opposite, right? When it happens and it's, good, it's due to me, right? Good things are always stable and they happen in all kinds of circumstances. What this amounts to, when psychologists have done attribution retraining, do you want to know what they do for that retraining? That attribution retraining simply has to do with learning to master something. Just learning to master something. And so that's why I have this slide up here again. And so learning that it takes time to master something, increments to master something. That the reason that this bad event happened isn't because it happens all the time, isn't because it happens in every situation, doesn't happen because I'm stupid or negligent or lazy or disgusting or all of those things. No, it happened because I haven't learned the next step. I haven't learned the next increment that I need to get to. I haven't refined that skill. And when I realize that I can refine that skill, whatever the skill is, it might be the skill of learning self-esteem. It might be the skill of learning to play the guitar. It might be the skill of learning to read, right? And how do we learn to read? We learn to read via steps, right? So we learn We learn about capitalization. We learn these sight words. By steps is what we do. And then we learn more difficult words and more difficult words. And we learn words that start with, right? And we learn how to practice our writing. And we learn diphthongs, right? Murmur diphthongs. And we learn consonant blends is what we do, right? And we learn those things one step at a time. One step at a time until we know our alphabet, until we know when to capitalize letters, until we know a grammatically correct sentence. We learn things in steps, and that is attribution retraining. That's what it is. Now, it can get more complicated. You can think about, are the attributions, what's the self-talk? Remember, your self-talk will tell you all about the attributions that you make. Why does this always happen to me? Stable, right? Let's take a look at that measure that we had there. Here, this measure here of the self-talk, right? So there is at the bottom there in the legend, we have I/E, internal, external. Is it your fault? Is it due to something else? Okay? Or is it a positive thing that you did, right? Due to your talents, right? Internal, external, stable, unstable, global, specific, right? Okay, so listen to your self-talk. You want to get specific about attribution retraining. You could be very specific about the retraining. You could be listening to your self-talk so that it always happens to me. Why, no matter what I'm doing, do I end up getting in the spine? Global, right? Oh yeah, I failed that test, but I didn't study at all for that test, so I know I'll do better. Specific to that situation. How do we do attribution retraining? We realize that we need to master a skill is what we need to do. We need to slowly, over time, master our skills, and that it's going to take time to do that. We learn that. And then the other part of it is where are my downfalls in my self-talk? Are my downfalls that I'm always blaming myself? Are my downfalls that it's always stable? Is my downfall that it happens no matter what the situation is? What is attribution retraining? That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what attribution retraining is. It's learning that I have to refine my skills over time and master something, and then paying attention to my self-talk. And that's what it is. Okay, let's move on then. We've been talking about attachment, right? And we talked about adult attachment. And we were talking about then infant attachment and talking about the different infant attachment styles. Now, these attachment styles, as I've said before, they mirror adult attachment style. So just like we have an infant attachment style, which is secure, we also have an adult attachment style that is secure. Just like we have an infant attachment style that is insecure, avoidant, this adult attachment style is dismissing. Okay, the second one there. If we have an infant attachment style that is insecure, resistant, where infants are distressed upon departure, but have inconsistent behaviors upon return, that's like the preoccupied mother who is also inconsistent in her caregiving, and she is also inconsistent in her attention, right? And her love and her discipline. She is also inconsistent in that. And I'm using the female here because normally we are talking about caregivers are the mother, and rightfully so, since the infant recognizes the mother's smell within hours after the infant is born. So certainly the mother plays a significant role in our ability to attach. However, as I've said, attachment, and then we've got the last one there. So insecure, disorganized. And again, these are infants who freeze at the sight of their parent. Why? Or caregiver. Why? Because that caregiver is typically abusive. So that is the fearful adult attachment style. Again, how do we train ourselves to get out of these fixed attachment styles? What did we say on Thursday? It is knowledge. Knowledge helps us get out of these insecure attachment styles. Knowledge that what? That we may have had an insecure infant attachment, but that if I want a secure adult attachment, I need to start working on what? Feelings of fear, right? And anxiety. Do you have anxiety? And then do you avoid relationships? If you want to have a secure adult attachment, what you want to do is be open to relationships and be confident in them so you have low anxiety. Be open to relationships and that you are actively approaching them. You are proactive in your relationships. So you want to be actively involved in relationships. They don't have to be sexual relationships. They could be nurturing relationships, right? But you want to be actively involved in a relationship, and being actively involved in that relationship should not be increasing your levels of anxiety. All right. Now you're like, all right, sounds good in words. How do we get that feeling of being more secure? And all of those things that I've been talking about over the last several weeks help us feel more secure in our and less anxious, more willing to get into relationships. Why? Because we're working on levels of self-confidence. We're working on levels of self-esteem. So we are building those things on real evidence. We have evidence for our self-esteem. We have evidence for feeling self-confident. And we have evidence for our commitment to good, quality, strong relationships. Okay, Lucy is barking over here, and I have to figure out what Lucy's issue is because I don't want her getting all oh, there she is. Hold on. I have to calm her down because she gets herself excited, and she gets so excited she uses all of her energy getting excited, and then she goes into a hypoglycemic attack because all of her energy, she has no resources left. We can do that too. We can do that too. A lot of times individuals who have anger issues that they don't know where they came from, check out your sugar levels, right? Because there are times where we can end up depleting our resources, and in depleting our resources, then we don't have any energy. And when we don't have any energy, a hypoglycemic attack, because our sugar plummets, causes individuals to get really irate and angry. So have a balance. Make sure that you're eating in balanced ways. You're getting all your vitamins and minerals. I notice that I end up having very tense muscles when I don't have my multivitamin, and in particular my magnesium and my B. All right, how'd I get off on that? Because Lucy loses all of her energy. She loses all of her resources, and that can cause a hypoglycemic attack, which puts us on an emotional roller coaster. So there are many things, vitamin D, right? Making sure you're getting your vitamin D, that you can do to keep some emotional stability. So that's what we're talking about today, right? So we're basically talking about our emotional baggage and trying to figure out how to keep stable keep our emotions stable is what we're doing, right? So that when we feel this level of confidence today, it doesn't dissipate tomorrow and we're not all in the, the fetal position crying our eyeballs out. No, we need our emotions to be relatively stable over time. How do we do that? We do that by creating a real sense of self-confidence, a real sense of self-esteem, a real reason to feel sexy and attractive, and therefore a magnet for other people, right? That has been the theme. So go back for the details of some of the things that I've just been saying in some of our other earlier episodes on self-esteem, which basically started probably about 3 weeks ago on self-esteem. So there's a lot of great information on how to build your relationships because you feel good about yourself. You can't build healthy relationships when you don't feel good about yourself. Now, I've talked about these. What are my core social motives of intimacy? I've talked about these 3 things already. And what we're talking about is, again, when we say core social motives, what we mean is that these are, we talked about 5 motives. Remember, I think it was Thursday, it might have been Wednesday that we talked about our 5 core social motives. And we use the acronym. We use the acronym BUCKET, right? BUCKET, B-U-C-K-E-T. Belonging, understanding, control, esteem, and trusting. So those are our main motivations that we have that get us to the top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs so that we become self-actualized. What are they again? Bucket is the acronym. B, belonging. U, understanding. It's a basic motivation we have. We need to be heard and understood. I am going to therapy sessions with my son, and I'm wondering whether or not the therapist is hearing some of the things that I am saying and understanding the things that I am saying, right? And so why? Because we need to have understanding. We need to be known that we need to feel that we are being heard. So understanding, control, that is number 3 there. We didn't talk about control as being a major motivation for attachment. But think about a mother and a child, right? In attachment. And let's say that child is always chaotic and disruptive. What would the mom want to do in order to attach to her infant? She would want to control that behavior. So attachment has an element of control, but it's not the number 1. If that's all that attachment was about controlling, where would the love be, right? Where would the feeling of belongingness be? Why do we want to attach to others? Why is it written in our DNA? So that we feel that we are part of a group, that we belong to something. It's important. And then, like we've said, we also need to trust. We also need that the very first element that the mother brings to the relationship with the child is a feeling of trust. So when you are in an important relationship, whether that relationship is with an intimate, somebody that you are sexually intimate with, or whether that relationship is with a child, or whether that relationship is with your best buddy, or whether that relationship is with a boss, right? There is a sense of belonging that you need even at the workplace. There is a sense of trust that you can do your work and get paid. That is part of the attachment that you will have, the loyalty that you will have to the business that you work for, right? If they make you feel like you belong, if you can trust them to do what they're supposed to be doing, and then also to have a sense of control over your work, right? I do this work, I get paid, right? That things aren't chaotic. So all of those things are major motivations, but also major outcomes. So they're the things that we need in a relationship in order to be attached, but they're also the rewards that we get, right? We get feelings of trust. We get feelings of love. We get feelings of control. So they are the things that are necessary for attachment, but they are also the rewards that we get. Of course, we can see that. That's the reason why we attach in secure ways. That is the reward, right? That we feel confident and we go into relationships with a sense of confidence that they will work out. Remember what we said? We had the topic on is love really worth it? Is there real love, and is it really worth the work, right? And we are driven for it. It's the number one need that we have. Belongingness encompasses all other needs. Understanding, we need to be understood so we belong. We need to trust so we feel like we belong. We need to control so that we feel like we belong. And we need to have self-esteem so that we feel that we belong. All of the other needs that we have serve our greatest need, the need to belong. So you can see why it's so important for us to attach. Now, today we're talking about emotional baggage. And the reason why I wanted to talk about emotional baggage today was because I have said to you that there are, and we talked about the self-talk in Allie's book, Hyperbole and a Half. And we also talked about the article where we had Brian, who was in Optimism, a Double-Edged Sword, right? And so we talked about the idea that what you need to do to have this level of self-confidence and get over these kinds of feelings of anxiety that we have is you need to have a level of confidence. You need to feel confident in yourself. And how you do that is by getting engaged. But I said that wasn't the only thing, because Brian, if you remember in the story of Brian got his PhD, had low self-esteem. His father was always attacking his self-esteem, very verbally and physically abusive to Brian. And what did Brian do? He ended up being an author. He wrote a book and he got his PhD. But he had physical symptoms that caused him to spiral down, and he could not even go and plug his book on a tour, do a book tour, because he was too sick to do the book tour. If you remember, what were Brian's two issues? Brian was successful in being engaged in life, in the world, all right? So that is the first thing here. We need to try and be engaged. That is belonging. That is trusting. That is giving you feelings of control, less uncertainty, because uncertainty causes great chaos in our minds, in our bodies, in our spirits, okay? So what we're trying to do now is we're getting engaged in life to create greater certainty about our talents, about our ability to make friends and communicate, right? So we're gaining this greater confidence by being engaged, by living life. Go skiing, make a friend, get over your anxiety, overcome that obstacle, study for that test, get that degree, engaged. And as we are engaged, it naturally builds up our self-confidence and our self-esteem. Why? Because if you remember from Fredrickson's Broaden and Build, what are we doing? We're gaining skills. We're gaining intellectual skills. We're gaining social skills. We're gaining physical skills, and we're gaining emotional skills. As we engage in life, we gain all of those things. You go play with kids on a playground. We're gaining physical skills, social skills. We're having conversations, intellectual skills, emotional skills. All of those things are being refined in our engagement. So, getting to your level of self-confidence that you need to be at, your level of self-esteem starts with engagement. It is your ability to overcome your anxiety that you feel in order to not avoid, in order to assert yourself, whether it be to ski, to play the guitar, or to make a friend. It's all the same. You're trying to gain the confidence that you need to overcome the anxiety you feel in doing these things. All right? But that was one piece. The one piece of this was the engagement. Get engaged in life. But the second piece was when I told the story of Brian, when we were first talking about optimism and pessimism in this topic, when I first told you the story about Brian, I said the second problem was that he didn't address his emotional baggage. Okay? So there are two things that really need to be done to overcome our feelings of uncertainty, to overcome our low self-esteem, and to make us feel worthy and self-confident. Two things: engaging. Why? Because engaging decreases our anxieties in those situations. The more I go, to the ski loft and ski down that mountain and put on my skis and get all my ski gear, the easier it is to do the next time and the next time, and all of a sudden it becomes automatic, right? At first it's difficult to write a paper, but once we've done it and we've worked that out, it becomes easier and easier. Why do we need to be engaged? How is it that engagement reduces the anxiety? Because we learn. We're learning how to put on those skis so we don't have to struggle and be embarrassed about our struggle. We're learning not to fall on the slopes so we don't have to be embarrassed, or water skiing, or whatever it is that you do, right? But the other part is that kept creeping in with Brian were all of those horrible feelings that he had from his dad that he didn't deal with. So that's the other thing. Dealing with those emotions. And a great way to deal with those emotions is by looking at your attachment styles, taking a look at those descriptions and see how they define you, and then see what you can do to be moving into an emotional place where you feel more secure in your relationships. Okay? All right. So two things. Engagement is number one, but that's not all of it. Number two is you have got to deal with the emotional baggage. Now, there's a lot of ways to deal with the emotional baggage. You can deal with it really by yourself. I do deal with a lot of my emotional baggage by myself, but the reason why is because I have a lot of knowledge and skills to do it, right? It's just like what I said. Why aren't you going to make the mistake of Milgram's study and go all the way with the electric shocks? Why aren't you going to do it? Because you know. Why don't I make some of these mistakes with my family members? Or why do I not go crawl up into bed and get into a fetal position every time I feel sad or depressed? Because I know what the outcome of that is, and all that's going to do is make me spiral down. I also know the outcome of broaden and build, right? Of the idea that positive emotions feed into a spiraling up effect, right? Okay, all right. So we've got to get our emotions in check as well. So now what do I have here? Well, I've got a couple other surveys for you. Here's a survey on social anxiety. And then I have characteristics of neurotics, what we call somebody who is neurotic or who experiences social anxiety. So there is a 9-question survey, and below that is exactly how you would score that survey. You can always email me and ask me if you have ask me about questions that you might have on how to score these surveys, because a lot of times people really have a little bit of a difficult time. Let me see here. Let me get a media source here. There we go. So, why can't you see the email ticker now? Oh, that's the reason why, because it's too small. Hold on. There we go. Okay, so if you want to email me and ask if you're not sure how to score some of these surveys, there's my email address, Dr. Feravich, F as in Frank, ERA, V as in Victor, ICH, at healthymindbodyspirit.net, and I can help you score those. It's pretty self-explanatory. Some of the phrases are phrased in a positive way. Let's see. Let me find it. A positive one. These all seem like they're scored in negative ways. These are all negative ones. I feel tense. That's negative. I feel somewhat awkward. Negative. I am uncomfortable. Negative. I worry. Negative. I feel nervous. Negative. I have trouble. Negative. I feel inhibited. Negative. I don't find it hard to talk to strangers. That's a positive one. I don't find it hard to talk to strangers. So that's a positive statement. We need all of the phrases to be all positive or all negative. So that's why you would be scoring that. You would be using that to score the information below to score your social anxiety. And you can see then what your scores mean as far as social anxiety. Most of you likely already know whether or not you're socially anxious or not anyway, right? But individuals who are socially anxious are what? Well, they are pessimist. We already have a bunch of measures for pessimist. But here's the other thing about individuals who are socially anxious that you likely will relate to. And that is this feeling of evaluation apprehension. Evaluation apprehension. And so what is evaluation apprehension? These are individuals who interpret social encounters as always being negative. That you're always being judged in those social encounters. When you meet people, it's the reason why people feel socially anxious and don't get involved in relationships. Why? Because they interpret, the first thing is that they interpret, let me get this over here, thing that I wanted to get. They are interpreting all of the actions of another person negatively. So if a person comes up and smiles at you, they interpret that smile as being sarcastic or wanting something. They interpret that in a negative way. All right, I got my notes here, and I just now I see. I'm fine. Fewer social encounters. Individuals who have evaluation apprehension clearly would not be involved with other people. They clearly would not want to meet other people. So individuals who have social anxiety, evaluation apprehension, are afraid about what other people think about them, will of course have fewer social encounters. They also have less eye contact. Now, this is an important piece of information, less eye contact. How is it that somebody can walk up to you, smile, want to have a conversation with you, and you interpret that in a negative way? How can that happen? How can a person sincerely walk up to you, smile at you, want a conversation, and then you interpret that in a negative way? Well, one reason would be because individuals who experience evaluation apprehension have less eye contact. And if I have less eye contact, that means I am not going to be able to read your social cues appropriately. I'm not going to be able to see the smiling in your eyes that go along with the smile on your face and the lifted cheekbones. I'm not going to be able to see those things because people who have social anxiety or evaluation apprehension, this is how they look at other people. Now, how is it that I can possibly interpret your social cues when I'm looking at my shoes? When I'm staring at your scarf or your clothes or the spot on your shirt, right? Or, I'm thinking about what I need to say to make me sound smart. How could I then be reading your social cues accurately? I can't. I can't read them accurately. And then what is less disclosure? Disclosure is I tell you a little bit about me and you tell me a little bit about you, and because I liked what you had to say and you listened to what I had to say, I'm going to tell you a little bit more. Disclosure is personal things I tell about you. So then I believe that nobody gets to know me, right? Nobody will get to know me if I don't have a voice, if I don't tell you about who I am, right? It'll be very difficult for somebody to get to know me. Okay, all right. So all of those things contribute to higher and higher levels of evaluation apprehension, or in layperson's terms, social anxiety. Those are psychological terms as well, right? Contributes to social anxiety. So take a look at that if you want to. Let me quick take a look at the next PowerPoint slide I have up here. So these are also characteristics of people who have social anxiety, and that is that they have less emotional stability. But if you take a look at, those individuals who have high positive affect, which is as opposed to high negative affect, or low negative affect, low positive affect. So these are feelings. Affect is just an emotion, right? Affect is an emotion. So which ones of those words do you think describe you, or set of words do you think describe you the best? So that can help talk about your emotionality. How emotionally stable are you? But there's a lot of things that go into emotional stability. It's not just your feeling, right? Because people have to obviously experience some emotion, in like excited, happy, calm, relaxed. You have to experience some emotion in order for us to determine whether or not we have got an emotion, affectivity. So the emotion. But also we're talking about the intensity of the emotion as well, right? Not just whether or not you experience an emotion, but whether or not that emotion is intense, right? So the level I experience fear, is it a low level of fear? Did I just hear a sound? Or am I in a dark alleyway and there's lots of sounds? High level of fear. So there's the affectivity, you feel the emotion. There's the intensity that you feel. How much do you feel the emotion? And then there's also a level of expressiveness. And so how much do you talk about your emotions? How much are you about your emotions, or are you like this about your emotions, right? So there is feeling the emotion, affectivity. There is the intensity of the emotion. How much do you feel it? And then there's the expressiveness. How much do you express it? And actually what we find is that people, so we want to know which is healthiest. Is it better to express your emotions, right? And get it all out? Or does that just make me into this emotional crazy person all the time? Because all I'm doing is expressing my emotions, expressing my emotions, expressing my emotions, right? So which is healthier? And you see in the bottom two there, these bottom two graphs that we have there, you've got somebody with more stable emotions here. So this is stability, somebody who doesn't experience a lot of highs or lows, and somebody who does experience a lot of highs and lows. But the average there of both of them is about the same. So actually, what we find is for emotional expressivity, how much do you express it? We find that actually you don't have to have a lot of high expression in order to be a healthy person regarding your emotions, right? You may need to write about them. Always a really, really good idea. I just watched the movie Precious the other day. What did that teacher say? Right. Every time Precious felt bad, what did she say? Write, write, write it. Don't scream it. Don't yell it. Don't be physical. Don't get violent. Write it, write it, write it. Does that help relieve that emotional instability? Does that help us become more emotionally stable? We know that it does. We know that it does. It just doesn't always feel, as I saw in that movie, doesn't always feel like it's the thing that you need to be doing. Sometimes it feels like what you need to be doing is to be yelling or screaming about something, right? Here is another assessment, and this assessment is for your emotional expressiveness. So these really are here for your own information if you're interested in learning a little bit more about these surveys and what these surveys are demonstrating. But they are really here for your own use. So there's emotional expressiveness, and there is a way to calculate your answers as well. And you can see how far below or above you fall with the average female, with the average male, and then with the total average sample. Okay. I think what we're going to do is I said we are going to get into, I said, emotional baggage and personality types. And so I'm going to leave it here with this, is personality typology used today? So this is personality type A, personality type B, personality type C. And then we also have a personality type D. All right, so when we come back, we are going to talk about these personality types. I think that there was something else that I wanted to talk about. That I didn't quite wrap up with you. So hopefully I will remember that. But if you have an idea of something that I did not cover completely with you that you wanted to hear more about, I know there was one other thing that I thought about when I put up this emotional baggage that I wanted to hit on a little bit harder. But we'll talk about it. We got the attribution retraining in, we got mastering in, and we're pretty good. We're doing pretty good in this critical thinking classroom. I hope you enjoy it because I really do. This is Dr. Annette Feravich, and I am the teacher in the classroom. This is the critical thinking classroom where we find out who we are in order to be more confident, in order to be more attractive, in order to be more sexy, in order to be more of who we really are. Thanks for joining me. I will see you